the CBS Morning News for Monday, the 12th of July. Good morning. I'm John Roberts.
And I'm Monica Gayle. Here are this morning's top stories. Midwestern flooding reaches a critical stage as water supplies are cut off for 250,000 Iowans. Broiling temperatures in the east are being blamed for at least 41 deaths in Philadelphia.
Iraq rebuffs UN weapons inspectors, setting up another showdown with the U.S. and its allies. President Clinton holds a political luau in Hawaii after a 6-day Asian trip. And on the weather map, the heat wave in the major cities of the Northeast will be coming to an end today, with thunderstorms moving the hot and humid air out to sea.
There is no end in sight to the suffering along the Mississippi River and its tributaries.
Thousands of people are without fresh water, others without electricity, and more than 30,000 now have been forced to leave their homes. And in many places, floodwaters are still rising. Scott Pelley has the latest.
Des Moines inundated by the Des Moines and Raccoon Rivers, both backed up by the Mississippi and weeks of heavy rain. When the water treatment plant was swamped, 250,000 people lost their water.
There's water.
Residents stood for hours outside grocery stores.
By the time we got to the store, which was an hour and a half after it was announced, all the water was gone.
By afternoon, the National Guard was carrying water in by truck, and residents will have to do this for at least a week while the water plant dries out. Downriver, towns that haven't flooded are building their last lines of defense. It seems almost every man, woman, and child is filling sandbags in the 90-degree heat of St. Genevieve, Missouri. The entire town is an historical landmark filled with French colonial buildings.
The town's got a lot of historic value to it, too, and Missouri would be losing a great deal of history if a lot of our town went under, so the least we could do is get in and pitch in.
Our parents live a block away and we're keeping it from going to their house. So my sisters come in from Joplin and we all came to help.
Here's an idea just how hard these people are working. In one 24-hour period here in St. Genevieve, these folks lifted, loaded, and placed more than 90,000 sandbags. Even so, the water has reached within inches of the emergency levee, and some historical buildings are beginning to flood. The high water is expected to crest in St. Louis next Sunday, about 2 feet higher than it is now. But it will likely be well into August before the water even begins to recede. Scott Pelley, CBS News, St. Louis.
Meteorologists are expecting a break in the weather pattern that's been producing heavy rains in the Midwest and some of the hottest weather since the 30s along the Northeast. It was a sweltering weekend from the Carolinas all the way up into Maine. Linda Tyra reports from one of the nation's hot spots.
The summer of '93 is turning out to be a deadly one. In the Delaware Valley alone, which includes Philadelphia, health officials report 48 heat-related deaths so far, most of them among the elderly.
There are a lot of elderly out there that may be in grave danger, literally life-threatening danger.
The reason for the danger is so many elderly people live alone and without air conditioning. So Philadelphia has set up emergency shelters where they can escape the heat. And the city has set up a hotline to give advice on making it through the hot days ahead. Another group at risk, children, as they try to beat the heat. One of the most tragic heat-related deaths in this area has been that of a 4-year-old boy who died after he accidentally locked himself inside a hot parked car. Officials are also concerned about air quality for everyone in big cities, with the hot air mass making an already bad problem worse.
We believe that the patterns that we have seen here over the past few weeks are associated with the overall global atmospheric circulation that's heavily controlled by the Pacific Ocean.
The end of the heat wave is coming, but until then, millions of people will just have to sweat it out. Linda Tyra, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Aides to President Clinton say they're delighted with the results of his 6-day trip to Asia. As Bill Plant reports, the commander-in-chief is rewarding himself with a little R&R in Hawaii.
The summit and the trip to Asia behind him, Mr. Clinton took a presidential dip in the Pacific Ocean with his daughter Chelsea and 2 of her friends as he began his Hawaiian holiday. But even on vacation, there are hands to shake and politics to consider. Local Democrats, who gave Mr. Clinton a big victory margin in Hawaii last November, turned out for a sort of campaign luau on the beach. Mr. Clinton is still talking about his overseas trip.
They have been saying to us for 10 years, you got to bring your budget deficit down. I went to Japan and I said, okay, we did that. Now bring your trade surplus down. And they said yes.
The president even held out the hope that Hawaii would benefit from the aid going to Russia.
Because it's in our interest for all those people over there to become customers for United States products and travelers to Hawaii someday.
But back home again, Mr. Clinton faces the same difficult issues he left behind. A large sign in the harbor behind him urged him to keep the ban on gays in the military. Mr. Clinton's advisors think that on this trip he buried the image of the new, insecure, and indecisive young president. They'll find out soon enough what Congress and the public think. After a few days of vacation here, Mr. Clinton heads home to face some tough issues, including the budget and gays in the military. Bill Plant, CBS News, Honolulu.
Many Americans have flunked a new quiz about a major trade package. Money editor John Stair has the details and the rest of the Monday Morning Business Report.
It appears that half of all Americans know little about the proposed North American Free Trade Agreement. A just-released CBS News New York Times poll says that 44% of the people asked say they never heard of NAFTA. Of those who do know about it, only 22% are supporters, 23% oppose the pact. NAFTA would create a single free trade zone between the United States, Canada, and Mexico. Supporters say that would create high-tech jobs in the U.S., while those opposed say it would cause U.S. industry to leave for Mexico and cheaper labor. Congress is expected to vote on the package in the fall. Northwest Airlines is a step further away from bankruptcy court today. It has reached a tentative contract agreement with the Machinists Union, a deal that's similar to an earlier pact with its pilots. Union members will take a vote later this month. Turning now to the financial markets. In London, first of all, stocks are mixed in early trading. In Tokyo, stocks were higher overnight. The Nikkei index gaining 102.5 points. That is 0.5%. On Wall Street, stocks were mixed on Friday. The Dow Jones Industrial Average closed at 35.21 after gaining more than 6.5 points. But the broader S&P 500 index lost a half point. It closed at 448.13. The Big Board Composite Index lost more than 1/8 of a point. It closed at 248.19. There were more gainers than losers on Friday. 1,075 issues were up, 845 stocks were down. Over-the-counter stocks were higher. The NASDAQ Composite Index gaining more than 3 points. It finished the day at 705.81. On the bond market, the 30-year Treasury gained 8 ticks, and in late trading, the yield had dropped back to 6.64%. That is a record, and that was in late trading on Friday. In London, price of gold opened at $393.70 an ounce. That's up $2.10 from Friday's closing price in New York. Taking a look now at what's coming up in the week ahead. Tomorrow, the Labor Department will release the Producer Price Index, and on Wednesday, the Consumer Price Index, both of those for June. On Friday, we'll get industrial production figures, also for June. And that's this morning's business report. John, Monica?
John, this seeming lack of interest in the NAFTA agreement, what do you think that's going to mean for its chances of passing through Congress?
I think this will actually increase its chances of passage because the Clinton administration will now bypass the American public, if you will, because it doesn't seem like there's much interest in it, and lobby Congress directly where it will have a much better chance of getting it passed.
We'll see. Thanks, John.
John. Well, just ahead, the nation's weather, and Tom Fenton reporting on the latest confrontation with Iraq.
And in sports, we'll highlight the one-man heat wave. Barry Bonds, baseball's hottest player, heading into the All-Star game.
This portion of the CBS Morning News was sponsored by Mountain Grown Folgers Crystals, in regular and decaffeinated.
The remains of 17 U.S. servicemen killed in the Korean War are finally on their way home. The coffins were turned over to U.S.-led forces in South Korea this morning. The move is seen as a goodwill gesture by the North on the eve of nuclear talks with the United States. The 17 bodies represent the largest single transfer of the remains since the conflict ended 40 years ago. About 300 American troops have begun arriving in Macedonia, a former part of Yugoslavia. The deployment was ordered by President Clinton to keep the war in nearby Bosnia from spreading. The U.S. troops will join a peacekeeping force of 700 from the United Nations along the northern border with Serbia.
U.S. forces in the Middle East could soon be called on once again to take action against Iraq. As Tom Fenton reports, this follows another failure by Baghdad to comply with Gulf War ceasefire.
The standoff continues in the Gulf this morning, with Iraq refusing to allow UN inspectors to seal off 2 missile testing grounds south of Baghdad. The inspectors abruptly left the country yesterday and are now awaiting further instructions.
We left Baghdad because the Iraqis did not allow us to seal the equipment. So I couldn't accomplish our mission, so there was no sense in us staying.
Iraq claims it will not use the missile sites for testing of prohibited long-range missiles and says UN insistence on long-term monitoring is a violation of its sovereignty. The Security Council will meet today to consider its next step and is expected to ask Iraq to destroy the 2 test ranges. The United States, which has a task force in place in the Persian Gulf, is warning Iraq to comply or face the consequences.
The United States is involved in discussions with our allies, and Saddam should know that these resolutions will be complied with one way or another.
Iraq may be gambling on dwindling international enthusiasm for strong action. The U.S. missile attack last month on Saddam's intelligence headquarters was supported by only one of America's former Arab allies in Desert Storm, and that was Kuwait. Tom Fenton, CBS News, London.
Well, one of the most talked about stories for the last week has been the weather. And taking a look at the national forecast, our satellite picture shows a line of clouds extending from eastern Ontario southward to the Tennessee Valley. That's a cold front, and it's going to snap the northeastern heat wave with thunderstorms later on today. Skies are clear over Iowa, Wisconsin, and Minnesota. Later on today, the flooded Midwest will have some nice weather with skies cloud-free and temperatures in the mid to upper 70s. Strong thunderstorms are likely in the east, breaking the intense heat wave, and it will also be stormy along the Gulf Coast and the southern plains. That's the national forecast. Now here's a look at your weather. Miami will be sunny with a high of 90. Dallas, partly cloudy and 91. Denver, partly cloudy as well, a high of 87. Los Angeles will be sunny today and a pleasant 83 degrees. Although beautiful weather will cover the Midwest today, a new storm developing over the northern Rockies is likely to bring more rain to the flooded regions as early as tomorrow.
Turning now to sports this morning, a sore shoulder might have made golf's U.S. Senior Open the final tournament of the year for Jack Nicklaus. Instead, he hopes it was a new beginning. Nicklaus opened the 4th round with a 1-stroke lead, but Tom Weiskopf had come from 4 strokes back to pass him before his approach on the 7th set up a birdie. Weiskopf fell into a tie with Nicklaus when he missed a putt for par on the 15th. Nicklaus took the lead by rolling in a 12-footer for birdie on the 16th. Nicklaus was 6 under when he finished with a par to win his 18th major title and recalled the 1960 U.S. Open, which he lost to Arnold Palmer on the same course.
A lot of hard work, and it's worth it when you get a good result. And I'm very pleased to win here at Cherry Hills. It's 33 years since I revenged what I did the last 9 here the last time and goofed it up.
And the Golden Bear can still roar. Baseball's 1993 All-Star break is upon us, and no team can use the rest more than the New York Mets. The Dodgers' Eric Davis homered off Dwight Gooden in the top of the 8th to break a 1-1 tie and send baseball's worst team this season to its 60th loss in 87 games. Only the Giants were hotter than the weather in Philadelphia. Barry Bonds doubled home 2 runs in the top of the 4th to put the Giants up 5-1 on their way to a 10-2 victory. The Giants took 3 of 4 in a weekend meeting of division leaders. At Chicago, the Astros got a diving effort from third baseman Ken Caminiti. He stole a hit from Ryne Sandberg as the Astros recorded a 10-1 victory. On the scoreboard, the Braves won in Florida. The Rockies topped the Cardinals. The Reds' Rob Dibble walked in Pittsburgh's winning run in the bottom of the 9th, and the Expos edged the Padres. In the American League, Oakland shortstop Mike Bordick showed some impressive range while starting a double play against the Red Sox. In the 7th inning, though, Scott Fletcher managed to get one past Bordick. It chased home the game winner in a 3-2 win. Boston has now won 15 of its last 19. Roger Clemens' pulled groin muscle is healing, according to the team. He made a minor league appearance for the Pawtucket Red Sox and picked off 1 runner in 3 2/3 innings of shutout ball. Clemens hopes to come back this week. Dean Palmer of the Texas Rangers hit his 21st home run. It scored 2, and the Rangers completed a weekend sweep in Toronto with an 11-6 win. The Jays have now lost 10 of their last 11 games. The White Sox got 2 home runs from Frank Thomas in an 11-5 win at Baltimore. Thomas, called the Big Hurt, will be among the All-Stars showing their wares at Camden Yards tomorrow night. And on the scoreboard, the Mariners got past the Indians, the Royals handled the Tigers, the Brewers beat the Twins, and the Angels outlasted the Yankees.
Lance Armstrong became just the 5th American to win a stage of the Tour de France. The 21-year-old Texan joined Greg LeMond, Davis Phinney, Jeff Pierce, and Andy Hampston as American winners. He outsprinted Spain's Raúl Alcala at the end of the 114-mile stage in Verdun, France. Armstrong is 12th overall, 2.5 minutes behind a Belgian racer. And finally, it was fun for the fans and a little more serious for the competitors when the Celebrity Golf Tour hit Lake Tahoe. Globetrotter Curly Neal had a trick to point out for Charles Barkley. Michael Jordan's only three-peat appeared to include his work in a sand trap. Jordan finished 24 strokes behind the winner, former Major League pitcher Rick Rhoden. Rhoden's 9 under par gave him a second straight tour win. It was worth $75,000. And that's sports this morning.
Was that a tee he was spinning that ball on top of? Unbelievable. Still ahead, we'll check the top stories on the CBS Morning News.
And we'll see Diana, the Princess of Wales, on a foreign goodwill and charity trip in a former crown colony of Africa.
Your chair. On the CBS Morning News, here's a look at today's weather. Thunderstorms moving across the northeast will bring an end to the intense heat wave. It will also be stormy across the southern plains, but the Midwest will have sunshine, at least for the balance of today.
And here's a look at this morning's top story. Iowa flooding has cut off drinking water for 250,000 people and forced 30,000 from their homes. And damage estimates along the swollen Mississippi have topped $2 billion.
All along the Mississippi, there are thousands of stories of people in a tug of war between trying to save what they have and a river trying to reclaim what it owns. Terrence Smith has one of those stories from a town that immortalized the mighty Mississippi.
If Tom Sawyer and Huck Finn were alive today, they might well be on this raft in their literary hometown of Hannibal, Missouri, helping their neighbors battle the big mud.
One more time, man. One more. Let's see that boatload.
These men have been working around the clock for 9 days to salvage their plant and their jobs.
Until you've actually experienced having to save your livelihood, you don't know what it's about.
Hannibal's historic and business districts are protected by an $8 million levee completed just last month. But John Hart, the town's emergency management director, says it will still be a close call this Tuesday, when the river is expected to crest at 31.5 feet.
So it's going to be within 6 inches to the top of the floodgates.
Just across the river from Hannibal, behind that line of trees, is the second longest levee on the entire Mississippi River. If that goes, tens of thousands of acres of prime agricultural land will be flooded. Hannibal got a brief respite this past weekend when the levees to the north broke, flooding other communities, but temporarily relieving the pressure on the town.
It gives us a chance to breathe, a chance to regroup and get ready for it when it does come, because being north of us, it's still coming.
Life on the Mississippi has become a struggle for survival. Terrence Smith, CBS News, Hannibal, Missouri.
Britain's Princess Diana is on a 4-day trip through Zimbabwe doing charity work. She arrived yesterday in the capital city of Harare to a celebrity welcome. The princess will be touring a leprosy mission and a refugee camp. She is expected to highlight the dangers of AIDS in Africa.
This is the CBS Morning News for Monday, July 12th.
The NAACP has begun a $100 million fundraising campaign. Leader Benjamin Chavis says the money is to ensure the organization's long-term financial security. The announcement came at the start of the organization's national convention, where Nelson Mandela was being honored. The South African leader was accepting an honor he was awarded in 1986 when he was still in jail. A nationwide campaign of protests outside abortion clinics is in full swing. The anti-abortion group Operation Rescue is leading the 10-day 7-state campaign. Abortion rights supporters are countering with protests of their own. And while there have been arrests in several states, there's been no violence.
In the glass ceiling of American politics, increasingly, women are carrying bigger hammers. But will the momentum created in 1992's Year of the Woman continue? Sandra Hughes was with one group determined to make sure.
Janet Reno. Although she's not an elected official, Attorney General Janet Reno
came to the National Women's Political Caucus as a symbol of the new wave of political women, powerful and influential.
Women can make a difference in politics.
This conference isn't fueled by the collective anger of 2 years ago, but by the knowledge that women are finally taking their place at the political table.
I think the common agenda out of this caucus is really going to be that women have got to support women candidates.
Many candidates, Republicans and Democrats and their supporters gathered at the National Women's Political Caucus to try to learn how to use the momentum of 1992 as a springboard for 94 and beyond.
I want to make a prediction. 1994 will be the year of the woman governor.
At present, at least 27 women are considering gubernatorial campaigns in various states, including Kathleen Brown, who hopes to follow in the steps of her father and brother in California.
I think having women in executive roles, which the governor's office is, sends a powerful signal about how times have changed.
After a weekend of workshops and networking at this year's conference, caucus members expect to play a vital role in upcoming elections.
What I'll do is I'll go back to my community and bring back what I've learned from the NWPC and get other women involved.
Ultimately, the women here have their eye on the one office they've yet to conquer.
What we're really going for is, in my view, a woman president.
As one young candidate put it, we've been on the farm team long enough. Sandra Hughes, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And finally, a Florida woman is recovering from huge fish bites after she was attacked by a barracuda. It happened off the Florida Keys. Nadine Clower says she was on board a houseboat when a barracuda jumped out of the water and lunged at her. Clower needed 200 stitches to close the bite wounds. Aggressive fish.
Story. Jeez. That's the CBS Morning News for Monday, the 12th of July. I'm Monica Gayle.
And I'm John Roberts. Have a good day and stay tuned for CBS This Morning with Paula Zahn here in New York and Harry Smith reporting live from the scene of the Mississippi River flood disaster.
Experience CBS News.